I remember the exact moment my world shattered, 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, standing in the cramped break room of Stella's diner with my phone trembling in my hands. The notification wasn't from a bank or a bill collector this time. It was from Emma's tablet, the cheap one I'd saved 3 months of tips to buy her last Christmas. Someone called Friendly Mike 47 had sent my 7-year-old daughter a message. "I can't wait to meet you tomorrow after school, princess. Don't tell your mom. It'll be our special surprise." My knees buckled. The phone clattered against the metal locker, and suddenly I was on the floor, stomach acid burning my throat. 7 years. 7 years of double shifts, of sleeping 4 hours a night, of choosing between electricity and groceries. All to keep Emma safe. And somehow, in our tiny apartment while I poured coffee for truckers and drunks, a monster had slithered through the screen into my baby's life. "Sarah, you okay?" Julio's voice cut through my panic. He was the night cook, the only decent person in this grease-stained purgatory. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. My fingers were already dialing 911, muscle memory taking over where rational thought had abandoned me. The dispatcher's bored monotone made my blood freeze. "Ma'am, we'll send an officer when one becomes available. Could be a few hours. Have you tried blocking the account?" "Hours," I choked out. "There's a predator targeting my daughter. If there's no immediate physical danger, you'll need to file a report at the precinct. Next caller, please." The line went dead. I sat there on the grimy break room floor, surrounded by the smell of burnt coffee and desperation, understanding with crystal clarity that the system designed to protect people like Emma didn't actually care about people like Emma. We were poor. We were invisible. We were acceptable losses in whatever bureaucratic nightmare passed for justice in this city. But I wasn't going to accept it. By 3:15 a.m., I'd called every number I could find. Child Protective Services, FBI tip lines, even the mayor's office. Voicemails, automated messages. One detective who told me, with audible indifference, that social media cases take months to investigate, and that I should monitor her more closely, as if I wasn't already stretched so thin I could see through myself, as if working 60 hours a week to keep a roof over our heads was somehow negligent parenting. Julio found me crying into a dish towel around 4 a.m. "Whatever's happening," he said quietly, "you need someone who doesn't follow the rules. You need someone who makes their own." "Like who?" I laughed bitterly. "I don't know any vigilantes, Julio." He hesitated, then pulled out his phone. "My cousin used to work at a club downtown. Private place. Very private. Run by a guy named Vincent Cross. He's connected. The kind of connected that solves problems the police can't, or won't." I knew what connected meant. I'd lived in New York long enough to understand the ecosystem of power that existed beneath the legitimate world. But I'd never been desperate enough to consider entering it. Until now. "Where?" My voice didn't sound like mine. It was harder, flatter, stripped of everything except maternal fury. Julio wrote an address on a napkin. Club Meridian. "But Sarah, listen. You can't just walk in there. These people, they're not social workers. They operate on favors and debts and things you can't take back." "I don't care." I stood up, legs steadier than they'd been in hours. "I don't care what it costs. I don't care what I owe. Someone is hunting my daughter, and if the law won't stop them, I'll find someone who will." The club was in a neighborhood I'd never visited. All dark glass and expensive cars that cost more than I'd earn in 5 years. The entrance was unmarked except for a brass number plate, the kind of studied anonymity that screamed exclusivity. 2 men in suits that fit too perfectly stood by the door, their eyes scanning the empty pre-dawn street with practiced vigilance. I approached on legs that wanted to run in the opposite direction. Everything about this place radiated danger, the kind of danger that swallowed ordinary people without a trace. "We're closed," one of the guards said flatly. I need to see Vincent Cross. My voice cracked. Please. It's about my daughter. The words jammed in my throat, too horrible to say out loud again. Mr. Cross doesn't take walk-ins. The guard's expression didn't change. Especially not from... His eyes flicked over my stained uniform, my scuffed shoes, my obvious poverty. The unfinished sentence hung between us like an insult. Something snapped inside me. I'd spent 7 years being polite, being grateful, being small, playing by rules that were written to keep people like me powerless. But Emma's face flashed in my mind. Her gap-toothed smile, her collection of rocks from the playground, her absolute trust that I would always keep her safe. I pushed past the guard before he could react, slipping through the door into a world of dim lighting and expensive leather. Vincent Cross! I screamed into the sophisticated darkness. I know you're here. I know you fix problems. Well, I have a problem. And if you don't help me, I swear to God I'll stand outside this place every single night and tell everyone who walks in exactly what kind of man refuses to protect a child. Hands grabbed my arms, security appearing from nowhere, but I kept screaming. 7 years old. They're grooming her online. The police won't help. Please, please, I'll do anything. I'll pay anything, just save my daughter. Wait. The voice cut through the chaos like a knife through silk. Calm, controlled, and somehow more dangerous than all the shouting. Bring her to my office. The hands released me. I stumbled forward, suddenly aware that I'd just bet everything on a complete unknown. But what choice did I have? Emma had none. They led me through corridors that smelled of expensive cologne and older money, past closed doors that muffled conversation and laughter, into an office that looked like it belonged in a Fortune 500 building rather than a nightclub. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, walls lined with what I suspected were original artworks, everything designed to intimidate. Behind a desk that probably cost more than my car, sat a man who didn't match any of my expectations. Vincent Cross looked younger than I'd imagined, maybe mid-30s, dark hair styled with careful precision, wearing a shirt that had clearly been tailored to his exact measurements. But it was his eyes that made my breath catch, gray as winter storms, assessing me with an intelligence that missed nothing. Sarah Coleman. He gestured to a chair across from him. 29 years old, single mother. Work at Stella's Diner, night shift primarily. Daughter named Emma, 7 years old. Attends PS 142. You're 3 months behind on rent, have $247 in your checking account, and your car needs a new transmission you can't afford. I sank into the chair, skin crawling. How do you... Information is my business, Ms. Coleman. He leaned back, those storm-gray eyes never leaving my face. You burst into my establishment at 5 a.m. making threats and promises. Before I decide whether to help you, or have you removed permanently, I need to understand exactly what I'm dealing with. So tell me, in detail, what happened to your daughter. The words tumbled out. Friendly Mike, 47, the messages I'd discovered, the appointment arranged for after school, the police indifference, every horrifying detail I'd been choking on for hours. By the end, I was crying again, but I didn't care. Pride was a luxury I couldn't afford. Vincent listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he opened a laptop and began typing with practiced efficiency. Friendly Mike 47, he murmured. Active on multiple platforms. Clever about masking his IP, but not clever enough. His fingers flew across the keys. Part of a network, at least 15 other accounts, similar patterns, targeting children in low-income neighborhoods where parents work multiple jobs and supervision is. He paused, glancing at me. Difficult. Can you stop him? I asked desperately. Can you find him before he gets to Emma? Vincent's expression darkened. Yes. But Ms. Coleman, You need to understand what you're asking me to do. The police follow procedures, warrants, rules of evidence. I don't. If I handle this, it will be permanent, thorough, and completely illegal. You'll know your daughter is safe, but you'll never know exactly how I made that happen. Can you live with that? I met those gray eyes without flinching. Can you? Something shifted in his face, a crack in the controlled facade, a glimpse of something raw underneath. I started this life because I believed the system was corrupt, he said quietly. Because I saw how power protected itself while people like you fell through every crack. I've done terrible things to terrible people, Ms. Coleman. I've made peace with that. The question is whether you can make peace with owing someone like me. I can owe you everything, I said, as long as Emma is safe. Vincent studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Go home. Watch your daughter. Act normal. In 72 hours, friendly Mike 47 and everyone connected to him will no longer be a threat. You'll receive a message when it's done. What about payment? I had to ask. We'll discuss terms after Emma is safe. He turned back to his laptop, effectively dismissing me. One of my men will drive you home. And Ms. Coleman, if you tell anyone, police, friends, anyone, about this conversation, the deal is off. Understood? I nodded, not trusting my voice. As I reached the door, he spoke again. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. The system failed your daughter, but you didn't. I wanted to thank him, wanted to ask 1,000 questions, wanted to understand who this man really was beneath the expensive suits and criminal connections. But exhaustion was crashing over me like a wave, and Emma would be waking up in 2 hours, expecting pancakes and normalcy. So I just whispered, "Thank you," and let his security escort me back into the ordinary world. But nothing would be ordinary again. The next 72 hours were the longest of my life. I went through the motions, pancakes for breakfast, walking Emma to school, kissing her goodbye at the gates while my heart shredded itself, imagining what could have happened. At work, I moved like an automaton, pouring coffee and clearing tables while my mind ran endless loops of terror and desperate hope. Julio asked if I'd followed up with his suggestion. I just nodded, unable to explain that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross, that I'd placed my daughter's life in the hands of a man who trafficked in information and intimidation. Emma seemed normal, happy, completely unaware that a predator had been circling her like a shark. I'd confiscated her tablet, claiming it needed repairs, and she'd complained for exactly 10 minutes before getting distracted by a book about space. 7-year-olds bounced back so easily, unaware of the adult horrors lurking in their innocent world. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that message. Our special surprise. Every creak in our apartment building made me bolt upright, heart hammering. What if Vincent Cross decided I wasn't worth the trouble? What if friendly Mike 47 realized someone was investigating? What if... My phone buzzed at 11:37 p.m. on Friday night. Unknown number. 1 line of text. It's done. The network is offline. Emma is safe. Be at Meridian tomorrow, 9 a.m. We need to talk about your debt. I read it 17 times, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. It's done. Emma is safe. 3 days ago, those words would have meant everything. Now they were tangled up with that last sentence. Your debt. What had I promised? What did a man like Vincent Cross consider appropriate payment from a waitress with $247 to her name? I showed up at Club Meridian at 8:55 a.m., wearing the only non-uniform clothes I owned, jeans and a sweater Emma had picked out last year, because it was pretty blue like the sky. The same guards were at the door, but this time they simply nodded and let me pass. The club looked different in daylight, less menacing, almost ordinary. Without the nighttime crowds and dim lighting, It was just an expensive space with good furniture. Vincent's office door was open. He sat behind his desk reviewing something on multiple monitors, still wearing those perfectly tailored clothes, looking like he'd slept 8 peaceful hours while I'd been slowly losing my mind. "Ms. Coleman." He gestured to the same chair. "On time. I appreciate punctuality." "Is she really safe?" I needed to hear it again. "Emma, the man." Friendly Mike 47 was actually Michael Dennison, 43, registered nurse in Queens. He's currently in police custody along with 16 other members of his network. Seized computers, chat logs, planned meetings, everything the FBI needs to prosecute. Vincent's tone was clinical, detached. "They'll never threaten another child." Relief hit me so hard I gasped. "How did you—" "I told you. Information is my business." He tapped one of the monitors. Dennison was sloppy. He thought VPNs and encrypted messaging made him invisible, but digital footprints are never truly erased. I have people who specialize in finding what others try to hide. "Hackers," I said flatly. "You used hackers to track him." "Among other resources." Vincent's expression was unreadable. "But the prosecution will believe it was good old-fashioned detective work. Anonymous tip, followed by standard investigation. No one will know how the information actually surfaced. Except us. Except us." He leaned forward slightly. "Which brings us to your debt, Ms. Coleman. You said you'd pay anything. I'm here to collect." My stomach dropped. This was it. The moment where I learned exactly what kind of monster I'd invited into our lives. "What do you want?" Vincent was quiet for a moment, studying me with those storm-gray eyes. "Tell me about Emma. What is she like? What's she good at?" I blinked. "I don't understand." "Humor me. She loves science, rocks, stars, how things work. She's always asking questions, always building things out of whatever she can find." A smile crept onto my face despite my fear. "Last month she made a robot out of cardboard boxes and Christmas lights. Didn't work, obviously, but she was so proud of it. She wants to be an engineer when she grows up." "Smart kid." Vincent's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Does she know how hard you work for her?" "I don't know. I hope so, but I also hope she never has to really understand. You know. I want her childhood to be about robots and rocks, not about how many extra shifts I need for rent. My mother worked 3 jobs." The words came out quietly, unexpectedly. "I was 8 when I realized other kids' parents came home for dinner. She'd leave before I woke up, come back after I was asleep. I thought I was raising myself." Vincent's jaw tightened. "When she died, exhaustion, the doctor said, like that's a medical diagnosis. I was 15. That's when I learned that hard work doesn't guarantee survival, that the system protects people who already have protection and discards everyone else." I didn't know what to say. This glimpse of humanity underneath the criminal facade was more unsettling than his earlier coldness. "So here's your debt," Vincent continued. "I'm going to offer you a job. Real job, not waitressing. Working for me, helping manage information security for my various enterprises. You'll learn digital systems, encryption, how to protect data, and find vulnerabilities. Starting salary is $75 a year, plus benefits. You'll work normal hours. No more night shifts. Emma will have a mother who's actually present." I stared at him. "You're joking." "I don't joke about employment." He turned one of the monitors toward me. On the screen was a detailed portfolio, training programs, certifications, career progression. "You impressed me, Ms. Coleman. You took action when everyone else told you to wait and follow procedures. You understood that sometimes survival means breaking the rules. That's exactly the kind of person I need on my team." "I don't know anything about computers," I protested. I can barely handle Excel. You'll learn. I'll pay for your training. Vincent's tone left no room for argument. But there are conditions. Everything you see, everything you learn, everything you do for me stays confidential. You'll be party to information that could destroy lives, mine included. Can you handle that? You're asking if I can keep secrets while helping a criminal organization. I should have been horrified. Should have stood up and walked out. Should have protected my daughter from this world of gray morality and dangerous men. But I was so damn tired of being powerless. Yes, Vincent said simply. That's exactly what I'm asking. I thought about my crumbling apartment, about Emma's worn-out shoes, about the electricity bill I couldn't pay this month. Thought about the police dispatcher's bored voice, about how quickly the system had dismissed us. Thought about the fact that the only person who'd actually helped my daughter was a man who operated completely outside that system. What exactly do you do? I asked. I need to know what I'd be part of. Vincent considered this. I deal in information. Corporate secrets, personal vulnerabilities, digital footprints. Companies hire me to find their security flaws. Individuals hire me to find their enemies' weaknesses. Sometimes I expose corruption. Sometimes I facilitate it. He met my eyes directly. I'm not a hero, Ms. Coleman, but I'm not indiscriminate either. I have lines I don't cross. Like protecting children. Like protecting children, he agreed. Dennison and his network, that was personal. I could have turned the information over to authorities and washed my hands of it. But I wanted them to suffer. I wanted them to know that someone was watching, that their little safe space had been infiltrated and destroyed. So I made sure the evidence was overwhelming and the charges were severe. They'll die in prison. His casual discussion of ruining lives should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a savage satisfaction. Those men had been hunting children. They deserved everything coming to them. One more question, I said. Why me? You could hire actual experts, people with degrees and experience. Vincent's smile was slight, but genuine. Because experts haven't raised a child alone while working 60 hours a week. They haven't had to choose between medication and groceries. They haven't learned that the rules are written by people who never break them because they've never needed to. He stood, extending his hand. You understand desperation, Ms. Coleman. You understand that survival sometimes requires uncomfortable alliances. That makes you more valuable than any degree. I looked at his outstretched hand, manicured, steady, connected to a man who lived in shadows and dealt in secrets. Everything rational screamed at me to refuse, to take Emma and run from this dangerous temptation. But rationality hadn't saved my daughter. This man had. I shook his hand. When do I start? Monday, 9 a.m. Wear something comfortable. You'll be spending a lot of time in training sessions. Vincent's grip was firm, professional. And Ms. Coleman, thank you. For what? For trusting me when no one else would help you. For understanding that justice isn't always legal. His expression turned serious. I'll never betray that trust. You have my word. I wanted to believe him. Needed to believe him. Because I'd just committed myself to a world I didn't understand, gambling my daughter's future on a man whose last name was probably fake and whose business was definitely criminal. But as I walked out of Club Meridian into the bright Saturday morning, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Maybe Vincent Cross was a criminal. Maybe I was making a catastrophic mistake. But for the first time since Emma was born, someone was offering me an exit from the hamster wheel of poverty and powerlessness. Someone was saying my desperation and determination were assets, not failures. I went home and made Emma those promise pancakes. She chattered about her friend's birthday party and a particularly cool rock she'd found, and how she wished her tablet worked again because there was a video about Mars she wanted to watch. How about this? I said, flipping another pancake. We'll get you a new tablet, a better one, with parental controls and safety settings. But first, you need to promise me something." "What?" She looked up with those trusting brown eyes. "If anyone, ever messages you or talks to you online and asks you to keep secrets from me, or asks to meet you, or makes you feel weird, you tell me immediately. No matter what they say, no matter if they seem nice. Deal?" Emma nodded seriously. "Deal. Can I have chocolate chips in my pancakes?" "Yes, baby. You can have all the chocolate chips, because the man who'd saved her had taught me something. Sometimes you have to break the rules to protect what matters. The police had procedures and protocols and legal frameworks that let predators slip through every crack. Vincent Cross had hackers and information networks and a willingness to destroy anyone who threatened innocence. I knew which side I wanted Emma protected by. My phone buzzed. Another message from Vincent's number. "Welcome to Meridian Digital Securities. Your training materials will arrive Sunday evening. Also, there's a technology scholarship program I fund anonymously. If Emma maintains her interest in science and engineering, she'll have opportunities. Protecting her future is part of our arrangement." I stared at the message until my eyes blurred. A criminal syndicate was offering my daughter a better life than the legitimate world ever had. The moral clarity I'd been raised with was collapsing, replaced by something messier and more pragmatic. Right and wrong weren't black and white. They were complicated shades of gray. And sometimes the darkest gray was the only thing standing between innocent children and monsters wearing friendly smiles. I texted back, "Thank you for everything." His response came immediately. "Don't thank me yet. Monday's training starts with cryptography basics. It's brutal." Despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the knowledge that I'd just sold my soul to keep my daughter safe, I laughed. Emma looked up from her chocolate chip pancakes. "What's funny, Mommy?" "Nothing, baby." I ruffled her hair, feeling lighter than I had in years. Just thinking about my new job. "Are you going to stop working at night?" "Yeah, I'm going to be home more. We'll have dinners together. I'll help with homework. Normal stuff." "Normal is good." Emma grinned, chocolate on her chin. "I like normal." Normal, except normal, was now funded by a man who broke laws and destroyed enemies and operated in the spaces between legality and justice. Normal was me learning to navigate criminal enterprises while teaching Emma about internet safety. Normal was accepting that sometimes the devil you know is better than the angels who never show up. I'd begged a Mafia boss to save my daughter. He'd done it without hesitation. And now I belonged to his world. Me and Emma both. Protected by shadows instead of badges. God help us, I thought. Then amended. God help anyone who threatens my daughter again. Because next time, I wouldn't have to beg. I'd have resources, skills, connections to people who solved problems permanently. Vincent Cross had turned a desperate mother into something more dangerous. A desperate mother with power. I couldn't wait to start. Monday morning arrived with the weight of a life-changing decision, crystallizing into reality. I dropped Emma at school. New backpack, new shoes, bought with the advance Vincent had deposited in my account over the weekend, and watched her run toward her friends without looking back. Normal childhood exuberance, blissfully unaware that her mother was about to descend into a criminal underworld. Club Meridian looked different in Monday morning light. More like a tech startup than a nightclub, with people in casual clothes carrying laptops and coffee through hallways that had seemed sinister just days before. Vincent met me in the lobby himself, wearing jeans and a black sweater that probably still cost more than my monthly rent, but at least didn't scream crime lord. "Ready?" he asked. "No," I admitted. "But when has that ever stopped me?" He almost smiled. "Good answer. Follow me." The training room was on the 3rd floor. I hadn't even known the club had multiple floors, and looks like a university computer lab. A dozen stations with high-end equipment, whiteboards covered in what looked like mathematical formulas, and a woman in her 40s sitting at the front, silver-streaked hair in a messy bun, wearing a t-shirt that said, "In Code We Trust." "Sarah Coleman, meet Maya Reeves," Vincent said. "She'll be handling your technical training." "Maya, this is our new information security specialist." Maya looked me up and down with sharp, assessing eyes. "Vincent says you have zero background in cybersecurity but managed to raise a kid alone for 7 years on a waitress salary. That tells me you're a problem solver with infinite patience. Exactly what I need." She gestured to a station. "Sit. We're starting with basics, but fair warning, I don't believe in hand-holding. You'll learn fast or you'll learn painfully. Questions?" "Just one," I said, setting down my bag. "How did you end up here?" Maya's expression flickered with something dark. "My daughter was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. Police had multiple reports, multiple warnings, multiple opportunities to intervene. They did nothing until she was dead." Her voice was flat, emotionless from repetition. "Vincent found the boyfriend 3 days after he skipped bail. I don't ask what happened to him. I just know he never hurt anyone again. After that, Vincent offered me a job teaching people how to find monsters before they strike. Been here 6 years. The casual revelation of vigilante justice should have horrified me. Instead, I felt a surge of grim solidarity. "I'm sorry about your daughter." "Me too." Maya turned to her computer. "Let's make sure yours stays safe. Open your laptop and let's see if you can even log in properly." The next 8 hours were brutal. Maya hadn't been joking about the learning curve. She threw concepts at me like grenades, expecting me to either catch them or get blown up. Encryption protocols, firewall architecture, social engineering tactics, digital forensics. My brain felt like it was being rewired on the fly, neurons sparking and reconnecting in patterns that had nothing to do with memorizing diner orders or calculating tips. "You're doing better than I expected," Maya said around hour 6, when I'd successfully identified 3 security vulnerabilities in a mock corporate network. "Most people take weeks to grasp what you just absorbed in a day." "I'm motivated," I said, rubbing my temples, "and terrified of failing." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." She pulled up another screen. "Let's talk about the reality of this job. We don't just protect businesses and rich people. Vincent runs parallel operations, off-the-books investigations, exposing corruption, tracking predators. The stuff he did for your daughter, that's Tuesday afternoon for us. You comfortable with that?" I thought about Michael Dennison and his network, safely behind bars, because Vincent had bypassed every legal obstacle. More than comfortable. Grateful. "Grateful is dangerous," Maya warned. "Vincent is not a hero. He's a man with resources and a selective conscience. He'll destroy someone for hurting a child. But he'll also blackmail a CEO into silence or expose a whistleblower if the price is right. This organization exists in moral gray zones that will make you uncomfortable. You need to decide now. Can you live with that?" I met her eyes directly. The legal system let predators hunt my daughter because I wasn't important enough for urgency. Vincent stopped them in 3 days. Yeah, I can live with moral gray. I've been living in it my whole life. At least now I'm getting paid properly for it. Maya's smile was sharp and approving. "You'll fit in just fine. Now, let's tackle network penetration testing. If you're going to help catch monsters, you need to think like them." Vincent appeared around 6 p.m., just as Maya was wrapping up the session. "How'd she do?" "Better than your last 3 hires combined," Maya said. "Natural aptitude for pattern recognition, doesn't panic under pressure, asks smart questions. Give me 3 months, and she'll be running point on level 2 cases. 3 months. Vincent looked at me. "Think you can handle that?" I thought about Emma's smile when I'd picked her up from school that afternoon. Early, for once, because I actually had normal hours. Thought about the scholarship program Vincent had mentioned. Thought about the fact that I'd learned more today than in 4 years of community college classes I'd never finished because I couldn't afford to continue. Yes, I said simply. Good. Let's talk logistics. Vincent gestured for me to follow him to a smaller office off the main training room. You'll train Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. Weekends off unless there's an emergency. Health insurance starts immediately. I've already added you and Emma to our group plan. Dental, vision. The works. I felt tears prickling. Vincent. Don't, he said quietly. This is business. You're an asset, and assets need to be maintained properly. If you're worrying about medical bills or Emma's dental appointments, you're not focusing on work. Why are you really doing this? I asked. And don't tell me it's just good business. You could have helped Emma and walked away. You didn't have to offer me everything. Vincent was silent for a long moment, studying the city lights beginning to glow outside the window. When I was 14, he finally said, my mother collapsed at her second job. Exhaustion, dehydration, undiagnosed diabetes she couldn't afford to treat. She died in the hospital 3 days later while I sat in the waiting room because I was too young to be in ICU. No other family, no support system, just me and paperwork and social workers trying to figure out what to do with another throwaway kid. He turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw past the controlled facade to the damaged kid underneath. I ended up in foster care, then group homes, then on the streets. By 16, I was running scams just to eat. By 20, I'd figured out that information was the most valuable commodity in the world. More than drugs, more than weapons. People will pay anything to protect their secrets, or expose someone else's. So you built this, I said, gesturing at the sophisticated operation around us. I built this because the legitimate world failed people like my mother, failed me, fails people like you every single day. Vincent's voice hardened. The system works for people who already have money and connections. Everyone else gets platitudes and procedures that lead nowhere. So I created an alternative. Illegal? Absolutely. Necessary. You tell me. Where else could you have turned when Emma was in danger? Nowhere. The admission was both freeing and damning. You were the only option that actually worked. Exactly. And that's why I do this. Not out of altruism. I'm not that noble. But because I remember what it's like to be powerless, and I remember the people who could have helped, but didn't. He met my eyes directly. You remind me of my mother, Sarah. Single parent, working yourself to death, trying to give your kid a better life than you had. I couldn't save her. But I can help you. That's payment enough. I didn't know what to say. This man, this criminal, this vigilante, this broken kid who'd grown into something dangerous and purposeful, had just handed me the life raft I'd been drowning without for 7 years. Thank you, I whispered. Thank me by being excellent at your job, Vincent replied, the vulnerability shuddering away behind professional distance. Maya says you have potential. Prove her right. The next 3 months blurred into an intense routine of learning, growing, and slowly understanding the scope of Vincent's operation. Meridian Digital Securities was the legitimate face, a cybersecurity consulting firm that served Fortune 500 companies, government contractors, high-profile individuals. Everything legal, everything documented, everything squeaky clean on paper. But beneath that surface existed Shadow Protocol, the off-books operation that handled the cases the legitimate world couldn't or wouldn't touch. Missing persons whose families had been ignored by police. Stalking victims whom the courts had failed with inadequate protection orders. Financial fraud where the perpetrators were too connected to prosecute. And most importantly to me, predators hunting children through digital spaces while law enforcement moved at bureaucratic speed. I learned to navigate both worlds. By day, I'd analyze security systems and write reports for corporate clients. By night, not every night, just often enough to matter, I'd help Maya and Vincent's team track monsters. The first case Vincent assigned me solo happened 6 weeks into my training. A 13-year-old girl named Michaela, from New Jersey, being harassed by a classmate who'd created fake social media accounts to spread rumors and explicit photoshopped images. The school had suspended both kids. Zero-tolerance policy, apparently punishing victims alongside bullies. The police said it was a civil matter. Michaela had started missing school, stopped eating, written goodbye notes. "I need you to find every account," Vincent told me, pulling up Michaela's case file on my screen. "Every platform, every variation, every single place this kid is being tortured. Document everything. Then we destroy the bully's digital life so thoroughly he never touches a computer again without supervision." "He's 14, I said, looking at the bully's school photo. Just a kid himself, smirking at the camera with the confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences. "He's a predator in training," Vincent corrected coldly. "And if he's not stopped now, at 14, he'll be Michael Dennison at 43. Your call, Sarah. You want to wait for him to evolve, or do you want to crush this behavior before it metastasizes?" I thought about Emma, about what could have happened if Vincent hadn't intervened, about the fact that mercy for bullies meant tragedy for victims. "I'll find everything," I said. It took me 12 hours spread across 3 days, but I mapped the kid's entire digital presence. 37 fake accounts, 17 different platforms, hundreds of harassing messages, doctored images, threats disguised as jokes. He'd been systematic, creative, relentless. Vincent reviewed my work with clinical efficiency. "Excellent documentation. Now watch what we do with it." What they did was devastatingly elegant. Every fake account was traced back to the bully's devices with forensic precision that would hold up in court. Screenshots, metadata, IP logs, an evidence package so comprehensive that no lawyer could dispute it. Vincent anonymously delivered it to both the school board and the prosecutor's office, along with copies of Michaela's suicide notes and medical records documenting her declining mental health. The bully was expelled, charged with cyberstalking as a juvenile, and placed under court-ordered psychological evaluation with restricted internet access. His parents, who'd been defending him as boys being boys, suddenly faced the reality of their son's behavior in undeniable detail. Michaela stayed alive, started therapy, slowly began rebuilding. "That's the win," Maya told me when I expressed uncertainty about ruining a 14-year-old's life. "Not the bully getting punished, that's just consequence. The win is Michaela getting to live, getting to heal, getting to have a future, never apologize for that." She was right. I knew she was right. But transitioning from Waitress to someone who actively destroyed lives, even terrible lives, took adjustment. Vincent seemed to understand my struggle. One evening, as I was packing up to pick up Emma from her after-school program, he stopped me. "Having doubts?" he asked. "Not about protecting kids," I said carefully, "but about everything else. The corporate espionage, the blackmail, the times we help people I'm pretty sure don't deserve helping." "Good." Vincent leaned against the doorframe. "The day you stop having doubts is the day you've become what I spent years trying not to be. Someone who justifies everything. We operate in gray zones, Sarah, but we need to stay aware that they're gray. The moment we start believing we're purely righteous, we become as dangerous as the people we fight." "So, how do you decide?" I asked. "When to help, and when to refuse. Children always get protection. Always. No exceptions, no compromises." His voice was absolute. "Beyond that, I evaluate each case on whether the system failed through corruption or incompetence, versus someone just not liking the legal outcome. If police ignored evidence because someone was well-connected, I'll help. If someone lost a fair trial and wants me to manufacture revenge, I refuse. Where do I fall in that calculation? I asked quietly. Vincent's expression softened. You were a mother whose child was being hunted while authorities told you to wait for procedures. That's system failure through bureaucratic negligence. Easy decision. He paused. But you're not just a client anymore, Sarah. You're part of this organization. That means your judgment matters. If you think we're crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed, I want to hear it. The trust implicit in that statement was staggering. You'd listen to the waitress with 3 months of training? I'd listen to the mother who stormed into a criminals club at dawn and demanded justice. Vincent's slight smile was genuine. That kind of moral clarity is rare. Don't lose it just because you're learning to bend rules. I went home that night to find Emma working on a science project about internet safety. Her teacher had assigned it to the whole class after Michaela's case had made local news. She was creating a poster about digital footprints and asking me questions about privacy settings. Mommy, your new job is about computers, right? She asked, carefully gluing magazine cutouts onto poster board. Sort of, I hedged. I help companies protect their information. That's cool. Like a superhero but for the internet? Her gap-toothed grin made my chest tight. Something like that, baby. My friend Olivia says her mom thinks the internet is scary because of bad people. I sat down next to her, choosing words carefully. The internet is a tool, like anything else. It can be used for good things. Learning about Mars, talking to grandma, watching videos about science. But some people use tools in bad ways. That's why we have rules about internet safety, to help good people stay safe from bad people. Did you help catch bad people? Emma asked with disturbing perceptiveness. Is that why you left the diner? Yes, I said honestly. I learned that I could help protect kids like you from people who use the internet to hurt them. So I'm learning how to do that job really well. Emma processed this with her typical 7-year-old directness. Good. Bad people are yucky. You should stop them. If only adult morality were that simple. But watching my daughter return to her project, confidently creating her poster about online safety, I realized that maybe it was that simple. Bad people were yucky. They should be stopped. The fact that stopping them required operating outside legal boundaries didn't change the fundamental equation. Vincent had given me the tools to protect not just Emma, but kids like Michaela. To be the intervention that desperate parents needed when the system failed them. I'd been a waitress 3 months ago, powerless and exhausted, watching my daughter get circled by predators while officials told me to wait. Now I was something else, something dangerous, something that scared the people who preyed on the vulnerable. My phone buzzed. Maya. New case just came in. Trafficking ring targeting foster kids. Vincent wants full team on this tomorrow. Rest up. It's going to be ugly. I texted back confirmation, kissed Emma goodnight, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow I'd help hunt traffickers. Next week I might analyze corporate security for a pharmaceutical company. The week after, who knew? This was my life now. Legal and illegal, righteous and compromised, protective and punishing. I'd begged a Mafia boss to save my daughter. He'd taught me to save myself. And somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being a victim and become something far more complicated. A weapon aimed at the people who hurt children, powered by maternal fury and criminal resources. The system had failed Emma. Vincent Cross had not. Everything that followed was consequence. The trafficking case Maya had mentioned turned out to be the nightmare that defined my understanding of why Shadow Protocol existed. 3 foster girls, ages 12, 14, and 16, had disappeared from different facilities across the tri-state area within 6 weeks. Police filed reports, but foster kids went missing all the time, falling through bureaucratic cracks into oblivion. Social services was overwhelmed. Law enforcement was understaffed. The girls became statistics, until the 16-year-old's former caseworker called Vincent directly. "I know what you are," Rachel Mendez told us in our secure conference room, hands shaking around a coffee cup. "My cousin worked security at your club, before you fired him for skimming. He told me you handle problems the legal system can't fix. These girls are problems no one wants to fix." Vincent's expression remained neutral. "Why come to us instead of escalating through official channels?" "Because I tried official channels." Rachel's voice cracked. "I filed reports, contacted FBI trafficking units, pushed my supervisors, got told the girls were runaways, that foster teens do this constantly, that resources had to be prioritized for higher value cases. Higher value cases, that's what they called children worth saving versus children they could afford to lose." I felt sick. Emma could have ended up in foster care if things had gone slightly differently, could have become one of these invisible statistics. "Show me everything," Vincent said quietly. Rachel pulled out a folder thick with documentation she'd compiled on her own time. Movement patterns, shared contacts, timelines. She'd done better investigative work than most detectives, all while carrying a full caseload of other vulnerable kids. "This group operates specifically targeting foster system girls," she explained, spreading photos across the table. "They lurk on social media, identify kids aging out with no family support, offer modeling contracts or apartment rentals or job opportunities. Classic grooming tactics, but they're sophisticated. They know which girls are most vulnerable, most isolated, most desperate for someone to want them." Maya pulled up the digital files, her face grim. "They're using encrypted messaging apps and burner phones. Professional operation." "How professional?" Vincent asked. "Military-grade encryption, regularly rotated access points, offshore servers." Maya's fingers flew across her keyboard. "They know someone might come looking. They've prepared for it." "Can you crack it?" I asked, leaning over her shoulder to watch code scroll past. Given enough time and the right leverage points, yes. Maya pulled up a network map showing connection nodes. "But this will take weeks, maybe months, and these girls don't have that time." Vincent was quiet for a long moment, studying the photos of 3 smiling girls who'd trusted the wrong people. Then he looked at me. "Sarah, how would you handle this?" I blinked. "Me? I've been here 3 months." "Exactly. You're not conditioned to think like we do yet. How would a desperate mother with limited resources approach finding these girls?" I studied the materials, my brain sorting through everything Maya had taught me about digital forensics and social engineering. "They're using technology to stay hidden," I said slowly. "But they're also using it to communicate, coordinate, move money. Technology leaves traces even when you're trying to cover them. And they made one mistake. They're targeting a specific demographic. That creates a pattern." "Keep going," Vincent encouraged. "Foster girls aging out means they're looking at 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Social media presence means they're building trust through digital interaction before physical meetings. They're selling something. Opportunity. Hope. Escape." I pulled up one girl's Instagram profile. Sophia here posted about a modeling scout who contacted her 2 weeks before she disappeared. She was excited, told her friends, tagged a location, a coffee shop in Brooklyn. Maya was already pulling up security footage requests. If we can identify the scout, we can work backwards through their network. "Except this coffee shop's cameras only store footage for 7 days," she said after a minute. "It's gone." "But Sophia's phone isn't." I remembered something from my training. Even if they took her phone, it had location services. We can track where it went after the meeting. "I'll need a warrant for that data," Maya said. "No warrant." Vincent's tone was flat. "We're not waiting for legal processes. Sarah, you just identified our entry point. Maya, break into the carrier's database and pull Sophia's location data for the 3 weeks before she disappeared. Rachel, compile everything you have on the other 2 girls. Similar patterns might reveal more meeting locations." Rachel looked terrified and hopeful simultaneously. You can really find them? Yes, Vincent said with absolute certainty. But Rachel, you need to understand that when we do, the evidence we generate won't be admissible in court. We'll document everything, but it'll come from illegal sources. The girls will be saved, but prosecuting the traffickers will be complicated. I don't care about prosecution, Rachel said fiercely. I care about those girls coming home alive. Good. Neither do I. Vincent stood. Maya, Sarah, you're both on this full time until it's resolved. Drop everything else. Rachel, you're our liaison. Anything we find, you figure out how to make it look like legitimate social work investigation. Everyone clear? We nodded. The next 72 hours made my previous crisis with Emma look simple by comparison. Maya and I worked in shifts, sleeping in the office on the uncomfortable couch, surviving on coffee and takeout. We broke into phone company databases, social media backups, financial transaction records. Every illegal access, every privacy violation justified by the ticking clock of 3 girls getting further from rescue with each passing hour. I learned more about the dark web in those 3 days than I'd ever wanted to know. About how trafficking networks operated with corporate efficiency, supply chains, customer management, product inventory. The girls were products, commodities. Their youth and vulnerability were selling points advertised with clinical detachment. It made me physically ill, but I kept working. Maya found the pattern first. All 3 girls' phones pinged off the same cell tower in New Jersey within 24 hours of disappearing. Then the phones went dark, probably destroyed. But that tower is in an industrial area with limited residential buildings. I pulled up property records. 12 potential locations. How do we narrow it down? We don't. Vincent appeared in the doorway, having been coordinating with his network of informants. We check all 12. Tonight, I've got teams ready. What about police? Rachel asked, after we confirm location. Vincent's expression was hard. If we call them now and we're wrong, the traffickers get spooked and disappear. We get one shot at this. At midnight, I found myself in an SUV with Vincent and 2 of his security team, parked outside a converted warehouse that on paper belonged to a shell company with 17 layers of corporate obscurity. Maya was running thermal imaging from a drone overhead. 3 heat signatures upstairs, 2 downstairs, she reported through our encrypted comms. Movement patterns consistent with captivity, limited range, restricted to specific areas. That's them, Vincent said quietly. Rachel, call your FBI contact now. Tell them you received an anonymous tip about this location. Give them 20 minutes to assemble a team, then we're going in regardless. Vincent, I started. I know. He checked his weapon with practiced efficiency. If we wait for proper tactical response, the girls could be moved or hurt. If we go in now, we're vigilantes conducting an illegal raid. But I've been doing this for 15 years, Sarah, and I've learned that perfect procedure is the enemy of actual rescue. FBI arrived in 18 minutes, faster than I'd expected. Vincent's team melted into shadows, leaving no evidence we'd been there, while federal agents breached the warehouse with professional intensity. We watched from a distance as 3 girls were brought out alive. Traumatized, hurt, but alive. Sophia, 14-year-old Destiny, 12-year-old Amara. All 3 would need years of therapy and support, but they were breathing. 4 men were arrested on site. Maya had anonymously uploaded evidence packets to FBI servers an hour before, carefully sanitized of how it was obtained, but comprehensive enough to guarantee prosecution. Rachel sobbed with relief. Vincent remained expressionless until the ambulances departed, then finally exhaled. Good work, he told Maya and me. You just saved 3 lives. I wanted to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt hollowed out by the knowledge of what we'd seen in those 72 hours. The number of similar operations still running. The sheer scale of children being exploited while systems designed to protect them moved with bureaucratic slowness. "How many?" I asked Vincent as we drove back to the club. "How many cases like this are happening right now while we celebrate this one win?" "Hundreds." His voice was flat, exhausted. "Maybe thousands. I can't save them all, Sarah. No one can. We intervene where we can, when desperate people like Rachel know to call us. But the problem is systemic, institutional, rooted in a society that assigns different values to different children's lives. So we just keep doing this, playing whack-a-mole with trafficking rings and predators while the system continues failing? Unless you have a better solution." Vincent glanced at me. "I've spent 15 years building this operation. I've destroyed hundreds of criminals, rescued dozens of victims, exposed institutional corruption that destroyed careers. And it's still not enough. It will never be enough. But it's something. And something beats accepting that children are acceptable casualties of bureaucratic inefficiency." I thought about Emma, safe at home with the babysitter Vincent had insisted on paying for. Thought about Sophia, Destiny, and Amara, who'd be dead or disappeared forever if Rachel hadn't known who to call. Thought about the fundamental injustice of a system that required criminal intervention to protect its most vulnerable. "I hate that you're right," I said quietly. "So do I." Vincent's smile was bitter. "Welcome to moral complexity, Sarah. It doesn't get easier." The trafficking case broke something open in me, a realization that there was no going back to the safe ignorance I'd had 3 months ago. I couldn't unknow what I now knew about how many children fell through society's cracks. Couldn't unlearn the skills that made me effective at finding them. Couldn't return to being powerless. Vincent seemed to recognize the shift. "You're one of us now," he said a week later, when I was back to splitting time between legitimate corporate security work and shadow protocol investigations. "Not because I hired you, because you chose this. You could have walked away after Emma was safe. Could have taken a normal security job anywhere else. You stayed." "I stayed because you were right," I admitted. "The system failed my daughter and fails children every day. Someone has to be the alternative, even if that alternative operates outside the law. Might as well be people who actually care about the outcome." "Dangerous philosophy," Vincent observed. "Learned it from a dangerous man." His laugh was surprised and genuine. "Fair point." Over the following months, I settled into my dual life with increasing competence. Corporate clients knew me as Sarah Coleman, cybersecurity analyst with impressive credentials and a talent for finding vulnerabilities. Shadow Protocol knew me as the former waitress who'd stormed Vincent's club and evolved into one of their most relentless investigators. Emma flourished. Better school supplies, better nutrition, medical checkups we'd skipped for years. She joined the robotics club, started talking about science camp, made friends with kids whose parents worked normal jobs and never had to choose between electricity and groceries. "Your new job is way better than the diner," she told me one evening while I helped with homework. "You smile more now." "I'm home more now," I corrected. "Yeah, but you also seem, I don't know, like you're doing something important instead of just working." Her 7-year-old perception was unsettlingly accurate. "Are you happy, Mommy?" Was I happy? I'd spent years defining happiness as mere survival, keeping Emma fed, housed, safe. Now I had resources, purpose, the ability to actually help people instead of just serving them coffee. I worked for a criminal organization that broke laws with surgical precision to achieve justice the legal system couldn't or wouldn't deliver. "Yeah, baby," I said, realizing it was true. "I'm happy." Vincent overheard that conversation. He'd stopped by to drop off some case files and ended up staying for the dinner that was becoming a semi-regular occurrence. Somewhere along the way, my boss had become something like a friend, someone who understood the moral complexity of choosing between legal and right. "Emma's perceptive," he said, after she went to bed. We were on my tiny apartment balcony, drinking coffee and watching the city lights. She gets it from constantly having to read adults to figure out if we could afford things, I said. Kids who grow up with instability learn to gauge emotional temperature. You're doing well, better than well. Maya says you're ready for level 3 cases. Level 3 is solo operations, right? I felt a flutter of anxiety and excitement, like you'd trust me to handle a case from intake to resolution. I'd trust you to do it better than most people I've worked with for years. Vincent's tone was serious. You have something rare, Sarah, the ability to balance empathy with ruthless efficiency. You care about the victims, but you don't let that care make you hesitant when action is required. That's just called being a parent, I said. You do what needs doing, even when it's hard. Most people learn that through experience. You came hardwired with it. He paused. I wanted to discuss something with you. There's a scholarship program I mentioned when you first started, the one I said Emma might qualify for. It's time to formalize her enrollment. Vincent, you already pay me more than enough. This isn't about payment. It's about investment in the next generation. He pulled out a folder. Full academic scholarship through university, including living expenses and study abroad opportunities. Science and engineering focus. She maintains good grades and stays out of trouble. Everything's covered. I stared at the documents, vision blurring. This is hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's the future I didn't have. Vincent's voice was quiet. My mother died because she couldn't afford to slow down long enough to get sick. I dropped out of school because I had to eat. Emma doesn't have to follow that path. Neither do the other kids enrolled in this program. There are currently 37, all children of people who work for me or who we've helped through Shadow Protocol. You're creating a pipeline, I realized. Giving vulnerable kids the stability and resources to become something other than victims or criminals. Someone has to break the cycle. He met my eyes. I can't undo my past, Sarah. Can't save my mother. But I can make sure other kids don't have to choose between survival and morality the way I did. If that means funding scholarships through money earned from corporate espionage and information brokering, so be it. The money's probably cleaner in their college accounts than it would be anywhere else. I signed the enrollment paperwork with shaking hands, understanding that I'd crossed yet another threshold. Emma's future was now tied to Vincent's organization. Not through coercion or debt, but through opportunity that came from criminal profits laundered into education. The moral calculus was dizzying, but watching Emma sleep peacefully in her room, knowing she'd have chances I never had, made the equation simple. Sometimes justice required dirty hands. Sometimes protection required dangerous allies. Sometimes love meant accepting help from unexpected sources. I'd begged a Mafia boss to save my daughter. He'd given us both a future instead. Whatever that made me, accomplice, employee, friend, I'd wear that label with pride. Because Emma was safe, thriving, and heading toward a life where she'd never have to beg anyone for anything. That was worth every compromise, every illegal access, every night spent tracking monsters through digital darkness. Vincent raised his coffee mug. To breaking cycles. I clinked mine against his. To building something better from the broken pieces. We drank in comfortable silence, two people who'd chosen the complicated path, because the clean one had failed us. The city sprawled below, full of people like we'd been, desperate, powerless, falling through cracks. But somewhere in that darkness, Shadow Protocol was watching, and we didn't wait for permission to intervene. 6 months into my new life, I'd handled 14 solo cases ranging from simple cyber-stalking interventions to complex corporate espionage operations. Maya had stopped reviewing my work before it went to Vincent. Rachel sent me cases directly now, trusting my judgment on which ones required Shadow Protocol versus legitimate channels. I'd become competent at something I hadn't even known existed a year ago, a digital warrior protecting people the system had abandoned. But competence bred complacency, and complacency led to mistakes. The case seemed straightforward at first. Melissa Park, 16, being blackmailed by an ex-boyfriend who'd recorded them together and was threatening to distribute the footage unless she maintained the relationship. Melissa's mother had contacted us through the anonymous tip line, desperate because the police said they couldn't act until the boy actually distributed the video. Prevention wasn't enough for intervention. Classic coercive control, Maya assessed when I showed her the case file. Boy thinks he owns the girl through leverage. We destroy the footage, destroy his distribution capability, document everything for potential prosecution. Standard operation. I tracked the boyfriend, Tyler Chen, 17, honor student, college-bound, from a wealthy family with connections. His digital security was amateur level. I cracked his cloud backups in under 4 hours and found not just the footage of Melissa, but similar videos of 3 other girls. This wasn't romance gone wrong. It was systematic sexual exploitation disguised as teenage relationships. The rage that filled me was familiar by now. Maternal fury extended to encompass all vulnerable young people. Tyler Chen was 17, but he was already a predator in Vincent's definition. Someone who needed to be stopped before his behavior calcified into adult monstrosity. I compiled the evidence package. All 4 videos, chat logs showing his threats and manipulation tactics, calendar entries documenting his pattern of targeting girls, then coercing them into recorded encounters. Enough to destroy him socially, academically, legally. Then I made the call that would haunt me for months. Instead of going to Vincent first for review, I packaged everything and sent it directly to Tyler's high school administration, his parents, the parents of all 4 girls, and the district attorney's office. Comprehensive exposure, maximum consequence, immediate action. Within 6 hours, Tyler's family's lawyer contacted Vincent. "What the hell did your employee do?" The lawyer's voice was ice through the phone, which Vincent had on speaker in his office with me sitting across from him, stomach sinking as I realized my error. "My client is 17 years old. What you sent constitutes distribution of child sexual abuse material. Your organization just committed a federal crime while trying to expose one." Vincent's expression was unreadable. "Explain." "The videos your analyst distributed show minors engaged in sexual activity. Doesn't matter that they were recorded by another minor. Doesn't matter that your intention was to expose abuse. The distribution itself is illegal under federal law. The DA could charge your entire operation with trafficking CSAM." My hands went numb. In my righteous fury to protect those girls, I'd accidentally committed the very crime I was trying to stop. The legal distinction between exposing exploitation and distributing exploitation was technical, but technically, I'd just put Vincent's entire organization at risk. "We'll resolve this," Vincent said calmly. "Expect documentation within 24 hours, showing the videos were submitted through proper channels, not distributed. My analyst made an error in procedure that will be corrected." He ended the call and looked at me. Not angry. That might have been easier. Just disappointed. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't think the girls needed protection and I just wanted to stop him." "You didn't think," Vincent agreed quietly. "Maya, what's our exposure?" Maya had been working frantically on her laptop during the call. "Moderate. The emails were sent through our encrypted system, which makes them harder to trace definitively back to us. I can create a paper trail suggesting the evidence was compiled by one of the victim's parents and submitted through a school resource officer. It won't completely eliminate our involvement, but it creates reasonable doubt." "Do it. And Sarah?" Vincent's gray eyes were hard. "You've just learned the most important lesson of this work. Good intentions without strategic thinking create more problems than they solve. You could have exposed those girls to additional trauma. Their videos being circulated in court proceedings, their identities revealed to media, their exploitation becoming public spectacle. You could have gotten this entire operation shut down and put dozens of other vulnerable people at risk. because you didn't pause to consider consequences before taking action. Tears were streaming down my face now. I just wanted to help them. Help requires more than fury, Sarah. It requires precision. Vincent's voice softened slightly. I understand the impulse. I've made similar mistakes, especially early on. But you're not an amateur anymore. You're a professional operative, and professionals calculate consequences before acting. Those 4 girls deserved better than you, rushing to their rescue without considering how your actions might harm them further. He was right. God, he was so right. I'd been so focused on destroying Tyler Chen that I hadn't thought about the secondary trauma of their private violations becoming legal evidence, about the questions they'd have to answer in depositions, about how exposure itself could be re-traumatizing. What happens now? I asked. Now Maya creates the cover story. I negotiate with the Chen family's lawyer to ensure they don't press charges in exchange for our evidence being properly handled through legitimate channels. The girls get justice, but it takes longer, and it's messier than if you'd brought this to me first. Vincent leaned back. And you learn that this work requires patience and planning, not just righteousness. The next week was excruciating. Maya did construct a believable alternative narrative. Evidence compiled by Melissa's mother with help from a school counselor, submitted properly through a resource officer to the DA. The Chen family agreed not to pursue charges against Shadow Protocol, in exchange for the case being handled delicately enough to keep Tyler's crimes from completely destroying his future prospects. He'd face consequences, but not the absolute annihilation I'd tried to deliver. I hated the compromise. Hated that his wealthy family's legal resources meant negotiated justice rather than full accountability. Hated that my impulsive decision had forced that negotiation in the first place. But the 4 girls were safe. Tyler was under monitoring. The pattern was broken, even if imperfectly. Vincent suspended me from active cases for 2 weeks. Not as punishment, but as mandatory reflection time. You need to understand why we have procedures, he told me. Why I review everything before it goes external. Why Maya builds legal cover into operations. This isn't a game where we get to write all the rules, Sarah. We operate in the spaces between legal and illegal, and that requires precision. During those 2 weeks, I attended every training session Maya ran, watching how she carefully constructed operations with multiple fallback positions and legal cover stories. I shadowed Vincent through 3 case consultations, observing how he asked dozens of questions before approving any action. Not just, what's the right thing to do, but what are the unintended consequences, and who else might be affected, and how do we protect everyone involved? The work I'd thought I understood revealed deeper complexity. Every intervention rippled outward in ways that required anticipation. Every exposure risked collateral damage that required mitigation. Every victory could become a defeat, if not executed with strategic care. Emma noticed my distraction. "Are you sad about work?" she asked one evening. "I made a mistake that could have hurt people I was trying to help," I told her honestly. "I'm learning how to be better at my job. Everybody makes mistakes," she said with 7-year-old wisdom. "That's how you learn stuff, like when I used too much vinegar in my volcano project, and it exploded everywhere. Next time, I'll measure better." I laughed despite myself. "Exactly like that, baby. Next time I'll measure better." When I returned to active duty, Vincent assigned me a case that required extensive planning. A domestic violence situation where the abuser was a district court judge with connections to local police. The victim, Carla Nguyen, had tried leaving 3 times and been forced back by a system that protected one of its own. She'd come to us through a DV shelter that knew about Shadow Protocol's off-books interventions. "This one requires perfection," Vincent told me, spreading out the case file. "Judges have powerful friends. If we move against him, it needs to be comprehensive, undeniable, and carefully structured to prevent retaliation. You're going to plan this operation from start to finish. I'll review every step, but you're the lead. Show me you learned from the Chen case." I spent 3 weeks on the planning. Documented every instance of abuse through medical records, police reports that mysteriously never led to charges, testimony from neighbors and court staff who'd seen the judge's violent tendencies, identified his assets, his professional network, his vulnerabilities, built a strategy that would expose him without risking Carla's safety or creating legal blowback for shadow protocol. Maya reviewed my work with sharp eyes. Better, much better. You've thought through contingencies this time. Vincent's approval was more reserved. Good planning. Now execute it perfectly. Carla Nguyen is depending on you to be strategic, not just angry. The operation took 6 weeks to fully implement. We created an anonymous evidence package delivered to the Judicial Ethics Board, State Attorney General, and 3 major newspapers simultaneously. Documented abuse, financial irregularities, professional misconduct, everything needed to destroy the judge's career and legal immunity. We coordinated with the DV shelter to relocate Carla 3 states away before any of it went public, ensuring she was safe before the target knew he was under attack. The judge resigned within 48 hours of the story breaking, facing criminal charges and disbarment proceedings. Carla stayed safely hidden, rebuilding her life with resources Vincent provided through the same scholarship fund supporting Emma. That's how it's done, Vincent told me after it was finished. Thorough, strategic, effective. The outcome Carla needed with protections built in at every stage. You've learned the lesson. I had learned. The impulsive fury that had driven me into Vincent's club that desperate morning was still there. I still felt that maternal rage when I saw vulnerable people being harmed. But now it was channeled through careful planning, strategic thinking, and recognition that good intentions without execution created catastrophe. Emma's science fair project that spring was titled, Staying Safe Online: How Digital Footprints Work. She'd researched internet privacy, created diagrams explaining data tracking, and concluded her presentation by advocating for better education about technology's risks. My mom helped me, she told her class proudly. She works in cybersecurity, which means she protects people from bad guys on the internet. She says everyone needs to understand how to be safe online, especially kids, because technology is powerful, and we need to use it carefully. I watched from the audience next to Vincent, who'd insisted on attending because investing in the next generation means showing up for them. She's brilliant, he murmured. Takes after her mother, sees problems, and wants to solve them. I hope she solves them better than I do, I said. More legally, anyway. Vincent's slight smile was understanding. Legal and right aren't always the same thing. You've learned to navigate that difference. She'll learn whatever path fits who she becomes, but she'll have choices you never had. That's what matters. Emma won first place in her category. The judge praised her practical application of complex concepts to real-world safety issues. She clutched her ribbon with delight, already talking about next year's project. That night, tucking her into bed, I thought about the strange journey from desperate waitress to criminal operative to something harder to define. A protector operating in moral gray zones, a mother trying to build a better future, a person who'd learned that justice sometimes required dirty hands. Mommy? Emma's sleepy voice interrupted my thoughts. Are you happy with your job? Yes, baby. Very happy. Good, because you're really good at it. The shelter lady told me when she came to present at school. She said people like you help people like her. That means you're basically a superhero. I'm not a superhero, I protested. You are to me, Emma insisted. You keep people safe. That's what superheroes do. I kissed her forehead, unable to explain that real heroism was complicated and compromised, and nothing like comic books. That keeping people safe sometimes meant breaking laws and making ruthless decisions and living with consequences that haunted you. But maybe Emma didn't need to know that yet. Maybe it was enough that she saw the results. The protection, the justice, the intervention that made differences in real lives. Vincent's text came through as I was closing Emma's door. Good work on the Nguyen case. Maya's recommending you for senior analyst position. Interested? I typed back. What does senior analyst do? Lead operations, train new recruits, help me decide which cases we take on. Essentially become my second for shadow protocol operations while maintaining corporate security cover. Significant raise, more responsibility, more risk. I thought about it for approximately 30 seconds before responding. Yes. Because this was who I'd become. Someone who chose protection over procedure, justice over law, effective action over comfortable morality. I'd begged a Mafia boss to save my daughter, and he'd turned me into something unexpected. A weapon against the people who hurt vulnerable populations, powered by maternal fury and criminal resources and hard-won strategic thinking. The system had failed Emma. Vincent Cross had not. Everything that followed was consequence, but consequence I chose with full awareness. Sometimes the devil you know is better than the angels who never show up. Sometimes breaking the rules is the only way to actually help. Sometimes love means accepting that protection comes from complicated sources. Emma was safe, thriving, heading toward opportunities I could never have provided alone. And I was finally, genuinely happy in work that mattered, surrounded by people who understood that perfect morality was a luxury desperate situations couldn't afford. The waitress who'd stormed Club Meridian at dawn no longer existed. In her place stood something harder, smarter, more dangerous, and infinitely more effective at creating the world Emma deserved. 2 years after that desperate dawn invasion of Vincent's club, I sat in my office, my actual office, not a borrowed desk, reviewing case files while Emma did homework at the small table I'd set up for her visits after school. She was 9 now, confident and curious, chattering about her robotics team's progress on their competition project while I analyzed a corporate espionage case. The servo motor keeps malfunctioning, she explained, scribbling calculations. Marcus thinks it's a power supply issue, but I think the code is telling it to do too many things at once. Can computers get overwhelmed like people? Absolutely, I said, pulling up diagnostic software to show her. See these error messages? That's basically the computer saying, too much information, I can't process this. Just like when you have too much homework and don't know which subject to start with. Emma studied the screen with intense focus. So, how do you fix it? Prioritize. Break the big problem into smaller steps. Make the computer, or the person, handle one thing at a time instead of everything simultaneously. That's smart. She returned to her notebook. I'm going to try rewriting the code in sections tonight. Maybe if each section is simpler, the motor won't get confused. I watched her work, marveling at how normal this felt. Bringing my daughter to my workplace, helping with homework, discussing technology with someone who'd inherited both my stubbornness and my problem-solving instincts. 2 years ago, Normal had been scrambling through double shifts wondering if I could afford Emma's school supplies. Now Normal included Emma attending a private STEM program funded by Vincent's scholarship, me running major operations for Shadow Protocol, and both of us having security that once seemed impossible. Vincent knocked on the open door carrying coffee. Sarah, got a minute? Emma, your mom needs to boring adult talk for a bit. Think you can survive? I'll manage. Emma didn't look up from her calculations. I have math homework anyway. We moved to the conference room, where Maya was already pulling up files on the main screen. We have a situation, she said without preamble. Remember the trafficking ring we broke up 2 years ago? The one with Sophia, Destiny, and Amara? Ice trickled down my spine. What about it? 3 of the 4 men we arrested are out on bail pending appeal, and someone's been following Rachel Mendez, the caseworker who brought us the case. Maya pulled up surveillance photos showing a man clearly tracking Rachel through her daily routine. She reported it to police, who said they'd look into it. That was 4 days ago. Nothing's happened. Vincent's expression was granite. They're sending a message. You came after us. Now we'll come after you. Classic intimidation to prevent future interventions. Can we get Rachel into protection? I asked immediately. Already done. She's in a safe house as of 2 hours ago. Vincent pulled up another file. But protection isn't enough. These men need to understand that threatening our associates is catastrophically bad for their health. I recognized that tone, the cold calculation that preceded Shadow Protocol's most ruthless operations. What are you planning? Full exposure, Maya said, her voice hard. These 3 men got bail because they have resources and lawyers. Fine. Let's see how those resources hold up when their entire networks are destroyed. Financial records, personal communications, everything that proves they're not just traffickers, but connected to a larger operation. We expose them so thoroughly that their appeals become irrelevant because they're facing dozens of new charges. That's aggressive, I noted. Going after them while they're in the legal system could blow back on us. Let it, Vincent said flatly. I will not allow the people who help us to be intimidated without consequence. Rachel stuck her neck out to save those girls. She trusted us to protect her. That trust has to mean something, or we're no different than the system that failed her in the first place. He was right. Rachel had come to us because official channels had abandoned those foster girls. If we couldn't protect her from retaliation, what was the point of any of this? I'm in, I said. What do you need? The operation took 3 weeks of intensive work. Maya and I working in concert to map every connection the 3 men had to the larger trafficking network. Every financial transaction. Every encrypted communication. We found links to 6 other operations across 4 states, evidence of dozens more victims, proof of corruption in the bail system that had let them out in the first place. But the deeper we dug, the more complicated it became. These men weren't just traffickers. They were connected to legitimate businesses, political donations, law enforcement social networks. Taking them down meant potentially exposing people we couldn't control or predict. This could get messy, Maya warned during one late-night planning session. We expose these connections. We're implicating a city councilman, 2 police officers, and a state prosecutor. The fallout will be nuclear. Good, Vincent said coldly. Let it be nuclear. Corruption that enables trafficking deserves to be incinerated. I thought about Emma in my office, working on her robotics project, oblivious to the monsters we were hunting. Thought about Sophia, Destiny, and Amara, who'd been rescued, but would carry trauma forever. Thought about Rachel, hiding in a safe house because she'd done the right thing. Nuclear it is, I agreed. Let's burn it all down. We delivered the evidence in coordinated strikes, to the FBI, to state attorneys general in 4 states, to major investigative journalists. Everything documented, verified, undeniable. Within 72 hours, the story exploded across regional news. Trafficking network linked to local officials. Widespread corruption alleged. The 3 men on bail were rearrested on new charges. The city councilman resigned. The 2 police officers were suspended pending investigation. The prosecutor was disbarred. Rachel called Vincent from the safe house, crying. I didn't think anyone would actually care. I thought I'd spend my whole career fighting alone, watching kids disappear because no one with power gave a damn. You're not alone, Vincent told her. You never were. We just needed you to trust us long enough to prove it. After the call ended, I found him standing at his office window, looking out over the city. You okay? I asked. My mother died because no one cared enough to intervene, he said quietly. Because the system protects itself, not the people it's supposed to serve. I can't fix that system. It's too big, too entrenched, too self-protective. But I can punish the people who exploit its failures. I can make them afraid that someone's watching. that consequences exist even when official channels fail. Is that enough? I asked. Punishing individuals while the system continues failing? No, Vincent admitted, but it's what I can do, and it's better than nothing. I thought about that answer a lot in the following weeks. Shadow Protocol wasn't solving systemic issues. We were applying bandages to symptoms while the disease continued spreading. But those bandages saved real people. Rachel stayed safe. The 3 traffickers faced justice. The corrupt officials were exposed. Individual victories in an unwinnable war. But individuals mattered. Emma mattered. Sophia, Destiny, and Amara mattered. Every single person we'd helped over 2 years, they all mattered, even if we couldn't save everyone. Emma's robotics team won their regional competition that spring. I watched her accept the trophy with her teammates, beaming with pride at what they'd built together. Vincent attended again, sitting beside me in the audience, both of us applauding as 9-year-olds celebrated engineering victory. "She's going to do incredible things," he said. "She already is." I pulled out my phone to show him Emma's latest project proposal. Developing an app to help foster kids stay connected with caseworkers and support networks through secure communication. Vincent's smile was genuine, teaching her young that technology can be a tool for protection. "Learning from the best," I replied. That evening, the 3 of us had dinner at Vincent's penthouse apartment, a routine that had developed over 2 years. Strange, makeshift family dinners where Emma chatted about school, while Vincent and I discussed work in coded language she hadn't learned to decipher yet. "Are you like my uncle?" Emma asked Vincent suddenly over dessert. "Mom says you're not related, but you're here a lot, like Uncle Julio from the diner used to visit." Vincent and I exchanged glances. We'd never defined what our relationship was. Boss and employee felt inadequate. Friends felt incomplete. He'd saved my daughter, given us both futures, trusted me with his life's work. I'd become his second in command, his most trusted operative, his conscience when legal and right diverged. "I'm your mom's partner," Vincent said carefully. "We work together to help people who need protecting. That makes me family adjacent, I suppose." "Like chosen family?" Emma asked. "That's what my teacher says when people who aren't related become family anyway." "Exactly like that," I confirmed, realizing she'd just named what we'd become. Vincent, Maya, Rachel, the team at Shadow Protocol, chosen family bound by purpose rather than blood, by shared understanding that protection sometimes required complicated morality. Later, after Emma fell asleep on Vincent's guest room bed, exhausted from competition excitement, he and I sat on his balcony watching the city lights. "I never expected this," he admitted. "When you burst into my club demanding help, I thought it would be a one-time thing. Solve the problem, part ways, done." "What changed?" I asked. "You did. You could have taken a normal security job after Emma was safe. You had the credentials I'd helped you build. But you stayed. You understood what we were doing and chose to be part of it." He turned to look at me. "You became the conscience I thought I'd lost, Sarah. The reminder that we're doing this for the right reasons, not just because we can." "You give me too much credit," I protested. "I'm just a mother who got lucky enough to find someone who actually helped. You're more than that now. You're the person desperate people call when no one else will listen. You're the analyst who thinks through consequences before acting. You're the reason I trust this operation to keep its moral center instead of becoming just another criminal enterprise justifying itself." Vincent's gray eyes were serious. "Your family, Sarah. You and Emma both. Chosen family, as she said." I didn't know what to say to that raw honesty. Vincent Cross, the man who'd built an empire on information and intimidation, who trafficked in secrets and destroyed enemies without hesitation. He was claiming us as family, trusting us with vulnerabilities he showed no one else. "You're Emma's family too," I said finally. "The uncle who taught her that protection matters more than procedure." that sometimes breaking rules is the most moral choice, that people with power have obligations to people without it. Dangerous lessons for a 9-year-old, Vincent observed. Necessary lessons for a 9-year-old growing up in a world that will try to convince her that playing by rules matters more than achieving justice. I thought about Emma's app proposal, about her instinct to help foster kids stay connected to support systems. She's already learning to think about protecting vulnerable people. Might as well learn from someone who's actually effective at it. We sat in comfortable silence, two damaged people who'd found unexpected purpose in each other's orbits. The criminal and the former waitress, the man who'd lost his mother to systemic failure, and the woman who'd nearly lost her daughter the same way. Chosen family built on shared understanding that sometimes salvation comes from unexpected sources. My phone buzzed. Maya. New case. University student being stalked by a professor. University administration is protecting him because he brings in research grants. She's desperate. I showed Vincent the message. He nodded. Take it. I'll watch Emma. You sure? She's family, Sarah. Family watches out for each other. I kissed Emma's forehead in the guest room. She didn't stir, exhausted from her big day, and headed back to Shadow Protocol's headquarters. Another case, another victim falling through official cracks, another opportunity to intervene where the system had failed. This was my life now, splitting time between legitimate corporate security and off-books justice operations. Teaching my daughter about internet safety while hunting predators through digital spaces. Building chosen family with criminals who had more honor than most legitimate authorities I'd encountered. The waitress who'd begged a Mafia boss to save her daughter didn't exist anymore. In her place stood something harder, more complicated, more effective. A protector operating in moral gray zones. A mother building a better future. A weapon aimed at people who hurt the vulnerable. Vincent had given me this life. Emma had given me the reason to embrace it. And together, we'd built something that mattered more than legal or illegal, right or wrong. We'd built protection for people who had none. Justice for people whom the system abandoned. Hope for people who'd learned not to expect help. The university stalking case took 3 days to resolve. The professor lost his position, his grants, his reputation. Not through official channels that moved at glacial speed, but through carefully leaked evidence that made continuing to employ him untenable. The student stayed safe, transferred to a different school with Vincent's scholarship covering the difference in tuition. Another individual victory. Another person who mattered, saved from falling through the cracks. Emma asked me about the case in general terms. She knew I helped people, but not the details of how. Did you save someone this week, Mom? Yeah, baby, I did. Good. She returned to her robotics blueprints, secure in the knowledge that her mother did important work protecting people. She wasn't wrong. And someday, when she was older, I'd tell her the full truth about Shadow Protocol, about Vincent, about how justice sometimes requires dirty hands and complicated morality. But for now, she was 9, working on robot designs and internet safety apps, growing up with opportunities I'd never had because a criminal had been the only person willing to help when help was needed. The system had failed us. Vincent Cross had not. Everything that followed, the career, the chosen family, the ability to protect others, all of it stemmed from that desperate dawn when I'd burst into a nightclub and demanded someone save my daughter. He'd saved both of us. And together, we were saving others. One compromised victory at a time. One desperate person at a time. One child who deserved protection at a time. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even legal. But it was justice. Messy, complicated. Effective justice delivered by people who understood that rules written by the powerful don't protect the powerless. And that, I'd learned, was enough. More than enough. Everything.